It's great to have you here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
I hope you've learned something from our podcast this week or our YouTube show. And speaking of learning, it's time for me to go back to school. It's our weekly Clark Stinks segment. And later, something that truly does stink. Do you know that if you have aging parents, the odds that they're going to be targeted by scammers, by criminals, skyrockets as we get older? Because it's where the money is and also the vulnerability. So I'm going to talk to you about ways to protect your loved ones. But without further ado, it's time for Clark Stinks.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
Clark, you stink as much as a UNC daughter who comes home with a Duke boyfriend. You mentioned on an earlier segment that complaining on social media doesn't get you as far as it used to. Well, you clearly haven't met my husband. Well, I had a terrible experience at a burrito place. He tweeted, and within minutes, I had free entree loaded onto my account. Flight issue? Boom. Within minutes of a fiery tweet, a representative reached out to us and helped our issues. Being more persistent on X will definitely get you somewhere, especially with airlines compared to their customer no service phone lines. Sammy,
I appreciate that because what I said I may have overstated, and that's that social media used to be this special key that unlocked premium customer service from organizations that specialize at customer no service. It's not nearly as effective as it used to be. But it's not that it's not effective at all. You just showed not once, but twice. And I hope that free burrito was excellent.
It's not that Clark stinks exactly, but your advice to not use patient portals to fill out doctor's forms slightly missed the mark. I'm not in IT or cybersecurity, but I work at a private practice clinic that uses a patient portal. It's part of the software we use to keep patient charts. So whether the patient fills out the forms online or on paper and we type it in, the data is stored in the same place. If we ever have a data breach, heaven forbid, all patients would be affected, whether they use the portal or not. The only thing accomplished is taking a few more minutes for data entry on the appointment. Thanks for all the other good advice, Carla.
Carla, thank you. So patient portal, the big thing on patient portals, do not list social security number. Do not list social security number. What do you not list?
Your social security number.
Yep.
I listened to one of Clark's podcasts criticizing 403Bs for teachers. I do not think Clark stinks. However, there's a website that seems to contradict some of Clark's opinions on 403B accounts for teachers. The website 403bwise.org is an advocate of some 403B plans. They rate the Vanguard and Fidelity plans as a green plus, e.g. invest in it, and I have a Fidelity 403B Roth with my college, and it's been receiving a 16% return for the past 2 years. I was wondering what's Clark's opinion of this website and the 403B plans offered by Fidelity and Vanguard. VL,
let me tell you something. 403B Wise is heroic. What they are doing for teachers around the country is fantastic. The educational things they do and the calling out of horrific school systems and teacher union 403B plans is great. And I encourage any teacher in any school system around the United States, or if you're in a unionized district and you're in a unionized plan, in a union plan, go to 403bwise.org. It is the only source I know of in the United States dedicated to trying to prevent teachers from being cheated in horrific, gross, terrible 403B plans, which unfortunately remain the standard in most school districts in the United States, that teachers are being sold down the river by the school district or their union with trashy, terrible, awful, exceedingly high commission and high cost retirement plans. And that's what teachers are being left with. 403B Wise helps you know if the plan in your district is a ripoff plan or if it is a good one.
Not sure if it's you or me, but one of us smells like a cat litter box after returning home from a week's vacation. Ask me how I know. As a now former merchant, I received a lot of information from Merchant Services, our plastic processor, that most in general public are not aware of. One of those nuggets from the past was that business credit cards do not have the same protections as those issued personally. I've never heard you mention this, and I remember some years ago receiving many offers from various issuers pitching business cards. Is this still the case, or should I be the one to hit the showers? Alan.
No, Alan, you're completely right. It is something we mention from time to time, but it bears repeating, and I appreciate so much you posting this. When you apply for a business credit card, which all the big banks are pushing, the big credit card issuers are all pushing business versions of their cards. They're pushing them because you don't have the same consumer protections on interest rates and other things that you have with a consumer version of a credit card, but you have the same liability if you use a business version of a card as you do with a consumer version. Now, there was a business card I was recommending recently, even though you didn't have the same protections. And it was when Capital One was offering double the sign-up bonus for the business version of their card as they did for basically the identical consumer version. And I assume they did it because they knew that they didn't have to provide the same consumer protections with the business version as the consumer.
I get and read your newsletter daily. This was a few weeks ago, by the way, and a couple people wrote in with this same observation. This one had me shaking my head. One of your never, never, not ever rules, number 10, is to never click on a link in a text or email. This sounds reasonable, I guess. But then I started thinking, what was I required to do before I could read it? Click on the link in your email. You're not alone in this irony, but come on, Dennis.
Oh, Dennis. Wow. I mean, how do I even answer that? Because the email, I always say, you think an email is coming from a trusted source, and you click on the link in it, and what if it was a fake? Fortunately, nobody has tried to fake our emails or newsletters. But, I mean, what would be the answer to that? Because
I don't know.
You're the techno-brainiac.
No, I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I think somebody could try to spoof a newsletter from someone that I guess you just have to hope that it's coming from the right email address. If you put the email address our newsletter comes from in your safe senders list in your email account, that's the easiest way. So it's that safe sender.
See, you did have the answer.
Okay, there we go, I guess. Okay.
But the thing is, I don't know that criminals are going as far as spoofing information newsletters of any kind. And they're going after you with pretending they're from a bank, pretending they're from a brokerage.
Big retailer.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I gave recently the list of where
Best
the
Buy,
greatest numbers.
Walmart, Amazon.
There are certain organizations that account for the greatest number of these pretext fake emails with the hyperlinks in them. And I've never seen any list that any information newsletter was ever a source. But you bring up a very worthy point.
By the way, someone recently made a comment, I think on YouTube, that they signed up for our newsletter and then they got a bunch of spam, and that we sell our lists. We do not sell our email lists at all.
Not any day
Nope.
would we ever sell off your email address. Ain't happening.
You recently advised against buying cars that were part of a rental car fleet. I recently left the industry, and after spending nearly a decade working for one of the big three that may or may not have once had an affiliation with OJ, but agree
yes.
that renters don't treat them well, my company had a fairly robust maintenance program. Also, because all brands under their umbrella share cars, even their lower-cost brands benefited from the same maintenance program. I did notice several competitors with holes in bumpers, so I'm not vouching for the industry, but my time at Big Yellow left me feeling good about maintenance. Instead, my suggestion is to only buy cars with a rental history that you know you can take a beating, like Toyotas, trucks, etc. And please have a mechanic inspect it first. Robert.
Robert, thank you. I have never heard a positive perspective on maintenance at rental fleets of the major rental car companies. And I appreciate as an former insider that you did see good maintenance being done. I think where my emphasis on this has been is that rental fleets used to turn over their vehicles at much lower miles than they do now, and really in the same model year that they got them. And now they're keeping them year after year after year with heavy miles on them. And I'm noticing when I'm in rental cars 30 times a year, that the quality of the rental cars I'm getting in that have higher miles, they're just beaten to death.
This is not a Clark Stinks, it's a Clark correction. You consistently say ecosystem or ecosystem, like you aren't sure how to pronounce the word.
Which I'm not.
Ecosystem. This is the correct pronunciation for both American English and British English. Hope this helps. Thanks for all you do, Justin.
Justin, thank you. Justin, just so you know, I read so much, and I'll read so many words that I don't know how to pronounce. And so you'll hear me say things two different ways because I just don't know how to say them. And so I thank you for correcting me on that.
All right. Clark's hostility toward Zelle is borderline irrational. I use Zelle to transfer money quickly and free of charge from my checking account that receives direct deposits for paycheck, Social Security, etc. to a high-interest savings account. I also use it to send money to family and friends and other trusted recipients. And Zelle is quite frank that its transfers are without recourse for the sender. Clark should educate consumers about Zelle without the sharp hostility directed toward the banks that offer the service, or do a better job of explaining to readers like me who use Zelle without any problem. Carl,
okay, let me explain why Zelle has a greater architectural risk than you have with other payment competitors. The reason is if somebody hacks into your bank account, they then have the ability to move money out in a blink using Zelle, because Zelle is embedded in the checking account at a credit union or a bank. When somebody hacks into your account, they don't have that ability to move money out like that using Venmo or Cash App or PayPal or any equivalent of that, because some of the others have gone away. So the architectural problem underlying Zelle is why Zelle is a greater risk to the consumer than the other payment platforms. With any of these, though, remember this: you only pay a trusted friend or family member over any of these payment platforms. Just know that Zelle, from its initial creation, created more vulnerability for you as a consumer.
on a recent show you mentioned that you were okay with AT&T and others adding a $5 charge for paying by credit card. You stink because you failed to mention these companies are profiting off of this. Even if your bill is $100, which is likely more than most people's, the credit card companies are only charging $2 to $3 to AT&T, and less likely because of their size, which means that AT&T is profiting off the difference they're charging consumers and what the credit card companies are charging them. Kevin,
you're completely right. I have no problem with the business passing on the credit card merchant fees because there's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. How the Visa MasterCard cartel added here with the American Express bonus have managed to run these merchant fees to many, many, many times higher than they are anywhere else in the world. And merchants are being put in a squeeze play. But you're right that what you should be charged is only a pass-through of what their actual cost is. And what's happening at the cell phone carriers, thank you for correcting me, is they are treating this as a profit center, which is not okay.
Clark doesn't stink on this one, but he was certainly incomplete. He talks a lot about using password managers, including when responding to someone who asked about using a different email address as a username for their financial website logins. Yes, this is a good idea, but take it one step further. Whenever possible, do not use your email address as a username. Many savvy companies will allow you to use anything you want for a username. If you're using a password manager, it doesn't need to be any more memorable than your password. Use a unique login name for each financial institution. It could even be a long random string of characters to make it even more difficult to get hacked. At least two of your favorite children, Fidelity and Schwab, allow this. Dan.
Dan, thank you very much. And I appreciate, first of all, I want to tell you, Dan, how helpful it is when people who are really familiar with data security and all the problems we're having with internet security take time to post, because this is a very difficult area. And I am so helped, and your fellow listener and viewer are so helped by people taking the time to post a thoughtful thing just like you have about data security.
A listener criticized you for your mentioning of the Kia Carnival instead of his brand of choice of Toyota, neglected to mention the warranty. I'm not a brand loyal person, and I've owned almost all of them. Toyota makes pretty good stuff, but Kia, Hyundai, and Mitsubishi cover the cost of the most expensive to replace components for 10 years and or 100,000 miles. One out-of-pocket repair will more than likely erase any higher resale value. If Toyota's rarely broke, it wouldn't cost them much to offer a longer warranty. Kia, Hyundai, and Mitsubishi are smarter buys. Bill.
Bill, thank you. I will say something about Kia and Hyundai. They are on the march in the United States. Man, those two companies are taking market share big time in the U.S. They definitely have found a formula that's really appealing to buyers. And truth be told, the 10-year warranty happened back when there were enormous quality control and reliability problems with Hyundais. And it turned out to be ingenious that they didn't cheap out like corporate MBAs would usually have a company do. And they've kept it there because the buyer's assurance of that 10-year is brilliant. Beyond brilliant, because you tell a buyer making the second largest purchase in their lives that we believe in what we're selling you and we're standing behind it, where automakers have fallen all over themselves in recent years trying to curtail warranty benefits. Kia and Hyundai stand out separate, and I didn't know the Mitsubishi angle. At 10 years, 10,000 miles a year, 100,000 miles. And it is a corporate cost, but it's a brilliant, brilliant thing to build trust in a customer.
I have a Clark Stinks.
Ready?
You love to harsh on MBAs, but you have one.
I know. Well, okay. So one of the problems with MBA school, one of the problems is that people lose the wider perspective, that there's so much like, hey, wow, I ran the numbers. I mean, gosh, if we do this, we're going to blah, blah, blah. And so it really is shorthand for something that I feel is a blind spot in MBA programs, that there's too much emphasis on the bean counting, that if you do this, we're going to generate all this short-term money. And it should be the longer-term picture, more thinking in terms of the reputational harm of doing something when you break that trust with a customer. So that is really just, I can only say it because I have
Okay.
So, yes, I am not anti-MBA.
All
I
right.
just want anybody with an MBA to remember that you got to not narrow, you got to wide. You got to think what actually preserves that company's value long term, not just what makes the quick score. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, is that the first time you've ever done
Clark Stinks?
Krista generated Clark
Yeah,
Stinks
I think it
during
is.
Clark Stinks?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Coming up ahead, something that everybody can agree stinks, It's these hoodlums who are ripping off our senior citizens. We're going to talk about preventative straight ahead. I want you to try to imagine this. Working as a stockbroker, and I get a call from a customer of mine. And I can tell that he or she is just close to being looted by a con. What do I do? How do I handle it? I mean, this has come up in banking before, and now banks have a certain amount of protection to be able to protect a customer and not get in trouble for not executing a withdrawal or whatever. The brokerage industry doesn't have that yet. And overwhelmingly, people's assets are in brokerages and mutual fund companies. They're not in banks. And so the criminals are targeting the banks so much so, the brokerages, and the money seniors have in them and in mutual funds. So much so Barron's wrote a headline story about how scamming seniors is a huge business now. And Wall Street is begging the Congress to pass a bill called the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act, and passed the House last year, and they've not been able to get it through the Senate. And all it does, and it's a brilliant thing, it was bipartisan, members of both parties actually working together. What a novel concept. And the bill actually allows a brokerage to say, wait a minute, and slow walk a transaction when they think an elderly citizen is being taken advantage of by a con, which is absolutely, I'm talking about something that is skyrocketing. So we're an aging population. And as people get older, first of all, they can get kind of bored and lonely. Their kids may be across the country, whatever it is, and they've got a bullseye target on them because that's where the money is. And they may take that call, they may read that email and respond to it, whatever it is. And the losses are in the billions of billions and billions of dollars, according to the FBI. And it's only a fraction of the ones that they actually know about, because most people quietly just suffer their losses. So first thing is, this is simple. I don't know what your two senators are doing, but they're not doing things they should be doing, which is doing something as simple as this, is giving brokerages the ability to protect a senior citizen when it's clear to the people at the brokerage that somebody's about to be taken. It's pretty simple. But the rest of it is on us. If you are the adult child of a senior citizen, and you know, gosh, Mom told me that story 3 times in the phone call. Or Dad forgot that we just talked and called me again, or whatever it is. I mean, we know it. We know it. My dad died when I was young, and he was young, so I didn't, relatively young, so never experienced any of that with my dad. But obviously, as I've shared over the years, a lot of stuff with my mom. And she got ripped off not by somebody stealing her investments, but stealing her money with phony charities soliciting her. And I mean, the fraud, people are referring to this as an epidemic among the elderly, whatever. And once the money's gone, it's not coming back. And just because eventually the Senate will do the right thing and send this off to the president to sign, the point is that's not going to be enough, because it's teamwork. It involves you being involved. in your parents' stuff. And what I hear over and over again is there'll be a medical incident with a parent, and an adult child will come to the scene, and then they'll realize, oh, the medical event will pass, but then they discover, wow, I've been away too long, didn't realize the decline in my parent or parents in whatever, and you got to be nosy. You got to be involved, and your parents may push back, but you got to be involved to protect them. Because again, once that money's stolen, it takes a one-way trip.
I loved that advice the other day about using the Postal Service's informed delivery service for your parents. That's really good.
I mean, and you hear me pounding on this topic in different ways at different times because we keep hearing about it. Our Team Clark Consumer Action Center, we keep getting contacted by people who are in the throes of having more money stolen after money's been stolen. Or hearing from an adult child who says, what can I do? This money was stolen from my parent. So that's why you hear it from me, because there are good people in the world, there are evil people in the world, there are people that are mixed. But the sociopaths who know they're doing something wrong and they're proud of it, all the money they stole.
It's crazy. It's unfathomable.
So that's why. If you feel like, Clark, you're talking about this again, is because it affects me emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just crazy. Okay, Josh in Missouri says, I was following Clark's advice to reshop rental cars 1 week prior to a trip. Sure enough, the price went down, but I realized that I accidentally put the rental term for 7 days plus 2 hours instead of exactly the 7 days I needed. When I re-entered my information for just 7 days, the price went up by $40. Since there's no penalty that I'm aware of for returning a rental car early, I went back to my original rental term for 7 days plus 2 hours and will use the $40 I will save to fuel up my rental. I'm not sure if this is a one-off glitch or something more common. Have you ever heard of something like this happening?
Oh, yeah, Josh. Oh, yeah. I had, let me tell you what's going on. So the pricing from car rental agencies is completely dynamic. And you can book something and an hour later go back, the price will be completely different. So I had a situation where I had a flight schedule change. And so I was going to arrive 2 hours earlier than what it originally was booked for. So I went to, it says, you need to modify. So I went to change it to 2 hours earlier, and the price was so much higher because I would have lost that deal. So I left it as it was, and when I arrived, I went to get the car, and I was able to get it and pay the price I originally had booked for. And so know that because if you went back on right now and looked again, you might see that the price is completely different again and could be lower than what you just recently rebooked to, or a lot higher than what you just recently went to, because they change on a dime.
Well, this was probably because they had some special for renting more than a week, don't you think?
No,
like
no,
a
it's
long-term rental special?
7 day is, if it's 7 day rental, it's 7 day rental. And if you go past it 2 hours, you're normally paying extra hours. So this is about, they were treating it as a new booking, really, not, when they say modify your booking, I've discovered the car rental agencies generally treat that as if it's a brand new booking.
Okay.
If you make any time change.
Amy in California says, I bought some items, home fixtures, from a company that closed its doors 1 day after I bought them. I canceled the purchase within 24 hours. The products were never received. I disputed the purchase with my credit card company. They say we have to pay it anyway.
No.
The amount is $2,056, and to make matters worse, the company was also my employer, so I'm out of job as well. I had no idea they were going to close. Since then, they've filed bankruptcy. Why should I have to pay for goods that were never received? Why is the credit card not offering protections, and what recourse do I have?
So, Amy, first of all, we hear from a lot of people who do a dispute that's obviously within the bounds of doing a dispute. Failure to receive goods and services is like the clearest and easiest of disputes. and they get declined anyway. And the credit card companies are weary. They are dealing with, as people have learned, hey, I've got these rights with a credit card. They're just freaked out at the credit card companies with the expenses they're having with these chargebacks. So they're pushing back and in many cases violating the law. And based on how you described it, it's a clear violation of the law that you're having with this giant monster mega bank. So what you do is you redispute with them, and at the same time, you file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau at consumerfinance.gov. And this one, if it's as you said, this one's open and shut because it is a purchase of goods. You didn't receive the goods, and that is what this is supposed to be about, with a perfect example of when a chargeback is called for. The odd thing here, if a retailer is in financial trouble and they have any size to them at all, credit card companies know that, and they're doing extra what's known as holdback because they know at some point they're going to have to pay people who didn't receive the goods. And so this is even more egregious that your dispute was declined, and that's why you need to redispute and file at consumerfinance.gov, and then let me hear back from you.
Jay in Florida says, you can get to North Dakota without flying there. When I was on my quest to be in all 50 states before age 50, we did several circle trips. For North Dakota, we flew to Minneapolis and drove to Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and back to Minneapolis. We saw relatives, old friends of my wife, Sioux City Falls, and the Roger Maris Museum in the Fargo Mall, and lots of neat countryside and farms. Try a circle trip. I think you will like it.
Jay, I love this. So this is so funny because think how many times people have written in about the fact that I'm 49 and holding, never having been to North Dakota. I've been whining about it since, I guess, the 80s.
And Antarctica.
Antarctica, I'm not doing the Drake Passage.
You don't have to. People have written in saying you don't have to.
But the cruises are so much more expensive when you fly past it. Anyway, let's not talk about Antarctica
No.
North Dakota. I actually want my wife and I to go on a circle trip like you're talking about, flying into either Rapid City, South Dakota, because I love western South Dakota, and the Badlands, and going up to North Dakota and picking up that 50th state. She's looking at me like, you're serious about this? She wasn't exactly keen on it, but I want to do that. Rapid City a lot of times is really expensive to fly into. So yeah, we could fly into Minneapolis or fly into Omaha or something like that, then do the circle. I'm going to get it done because it just has gnawed at me forever. In western North Dakota, what I keep hearing from people is it looks just like western South Dakota, just less people. And I love, absolutely adore the beauty of western South Dakota. And if you've never done it, you've never visited, I can't vouch on the North Dakota part, but I can tell you western South Dakota will take your breath away. It is so incredibly beautiful. And if you're looking for a place to go in the fall, once the big push of tourists are done, September is awesome. And that's a great month to travel so many places in the U.S. So thank you for your suggestion, and I love it. And thank you so much for joining us today. And it's time for the weekend. I hope you have an just incredible weekend this weekend. And I'm looking forward to serving you with our next podcast on Monday. Remember what we're about. You learning ways to save more, spend less, and shop more at Costco. No, that's not it. Save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off.